Thank you very much, Stephen. Well, we will pick it up from your last conversation about the high cost of living, not only here at home, but around the world. We've seen that since the advent of COVID-19, the world has experienced supply chain disruptions and other ripple effects, including high inflation, high petrol and electricity prices, all contributing to the high cost of living. The war in Ukraine has, of course, worsened matters, but I'm curious as to how long this period of high cost of living will last. And for that, we are joined by Jacolize Meiring, a senior researcher with the Bureau of Market Research at the University of South Africa. Jacolize, thank you very much for joining us. You work on doing your research on a number of things, particularly around household finances and how they have changed over the years, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic. Many consumers are wondering just how long such a hard times are going to last. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but that'd be my first question to you. How long do these periods usually last?
Well, Solani, I think for that we first need to look at our cost of living. What are the major drivers at the moment? So currently, if we look at our main inflation drivers, that the major increases stem from food and fuel prices. And if food and non-alcoholic beverages, fuel and energy, if we exclude that from our basket, we basically see that our price increase, our latest inflation rate, would have been something in the range of 3.9% instead of the 5.9%. So although these only in the basket, if we look at the consistent how the basket is compiled, 16% of the weight is based on food and fuel, but they are responsible for 50% of the drivers in price increases that we are currently seeing. So when we need to look at how long this will last, that crystal ball, we have to look at what's happening on the international front, because a lot of the food prices and fuel prices are responsible, the movement is due to changes in the international sphere. As you already mentioned now, the war, we expect that war is likely to persist for the rest of the year. And many also expect that because of fuel prices, remember a lot of our food that are imported, our international prices on food and fuel have actually also increased because of a high demand, because of relaxation of COVID regulations, etc., across the world. So that everything compiles to the South African situation. The Reserve Bank, for example, expects that the food prices might remain actually at elevated levels, but the fuel prices may only subside or ease a bit in 2023. So with that being said, and if I look to our key informant survey from our Consumer Financial Vulnerability Index that we do together with Momentum, we definitely see a period expected longer than 18 months to see a recovery for the consumer.
Jacolize, when you're talking about that index that you do with Momentum, you also look the last time around, you looked at the impact that COVID-19 had on the economy. Now we know that the economy shrank by as much as 300 billion rand in 2020 alone, and tomorrow we are expecting State SA to release the first quarter GDP data. Slow economic growth usually when it comes to such issues as the high cost of living, slow economic growth will usually prolong this particular high cost of living, and with it unemployment as well.
Definitely. When we look to the economic environment that's outside of the control of our consumer, of our households, we unfortunately are faced with a very difficult, very strenuous economic circumstances. Low economic growth, high unemployment rates, together with high inflation, that just places the consumer finances under immense pressure.
Jacolize, the middle class is usually, when it comes to those middle class income households, they are said to be the ones experiencing most of the financial pain right now. Why is that?
Well, when we need to have a look at the demographics of our middle income earners, first of all, a lot of our middle income earners are in that area where they are a small family just starting out, or in a sandwich generation. We can talk about that as well. But specifically, if we look on the economic factors, our middle income earners were also greatly affected by the impact of COVID-19 and subsequent lockdowns, because a lot of them are in the fortunate position to have remained in a job, but they needed to take severe pay cuts. And those pay cuts has up to date not been fully recovered or rectified. And some of our other research that you referred to as well on the household financial wellness, the research that we did on that, we saw that many of our middle income earners are, especially those that have had the struggle of friends and family that also need to depend on them and needed to come to them for support. Then add to that, even our middle class is also those that are starting out to pay tax. So there's that constraint on their finances. And if we then compare the polls where our low income end, we basically have those that can depend on government for social assistance. And on the high income end are those individuals or those consumers that are actually in the fortunate position to have savings available to tap into. But our middle income earners, we see more and more of them are actually not in a position to actually even have those emergency savings that we all are propagating for, and we're basically saying make sure that you have those savings for emergency, because they actually had a lot of emergencies during the past 2 years.
And of course, those middle income earners are the ones who are going out taking more and more unsecured debt. Well, all of this, Jacolize, certainly calls for a change in lifestyle or the choices we make as consumers. But what can consumers do in this situation? When you look at households, there's something that I saw in your index that talks about the change index, where households can actually do something about their financial goals and the money they spend on a month-and-month basis.
Definitely. From our research, we recognize that in each and every household, if you imagine the picture of a house, outside of that house, there's a lot of storms. There's a lot of things that are outside of the control of a household when it comes to their finances. But what's happening inside that house is what consumers can actually do to take a bit control of certain factors that they need to be aware of, that they can actually do. So our theory of change that we have in the report that you're referring to basically stipulates that there are certain inputs that every household have, in the sense of you have an education level, and you have what we call social capital. So social capital being how in control do households actually feel? What is their mindset of their finances? And then that then translates to certain outputs. So because of research, a lot of research actually showing higher education levels translates in many cases to higher income. But in order to earn that income and in order to actually make more, do the necessary things with that income to invest, to do wealth creation, there's certain activities that will determine if a household is actually financially successful in that sense, that they can actually take control over their finances. And that talks to specific activities relating to, first of all, setting short and long-term financial goals, but then implementing a financial plan to actually achieve those short and long-term goals. So it doesn't help to just have those goals, but actually work hard to achieve them. And that financial plan then consists of things like having a budget in place, saving for your retirement, having the necessary insurance products in place, repaying the debt that you just refer to as well. So when that income comes in, make sure that you first give priority to debt repayments, and instead of going out for another dinner. So it calls to a change in behavior. It calls to a change in improving your financial literacy. Be aware of the jargon that's used, etc., in when it comes to financial matters. And if the household can actually then combine the inputs, as I refer to the education and the how in control, because if they do these activities, they obviously will feel more in control of their finances. And if they combine these, then that can translate to a better financial future and financial wellness in the household.
When I had a conversation with you before this interview, you said it's not all a gloom and doom. Somehow there is a silver lining. Where is it for households who are hard-pressed right now?
I think it comes to the realization that finances can be something that there are things that are in your control as a household. You don't need to be a slave to every thing that happens. Yes, we were all affected to various extents, job losses, income cuts, as already referred to. But take control of your financial future. Take control, do those little things, because every time it's something small that can make the biggest difference. When you think of something like, they call it, actually it's an international phenomenon, they talk about a latte factor. Don't stop buying coffee each morning. It's 20 Rand, 30 Rand nowadays even. Stop going to buy lunches at the canteen. When we think about even the small things of our price drivers at the moment, so electricity, think of using electricity more sparingly. Boil the kettle in the morning and use a flask to keep the water warm instead of boiling the kettle each and every time if you're working from home. Do small things further on when it comes to fuel prices. We all are struggling with fuel prices that's pressuring on our pockets. So think of plan your trips. See if there's an opportunity to work from home more if you are in that fortunate position. And furthermore, think of driving fuel efficient. So these small behavior changes, lifestyle changes, can definitely make a difference and actually put your financial future back into your hands.
Jacolize Meiring is a senior researcher with the Bureau for Market Research at the University of South Africa, and she believes it's not all a doom and gloom. Households and individuals can do something when it comes to the high cost of living we are experiencing at this present moment. Well,